Well, now that you've seen the contrasting sides of preparing our minds for theology, this is the idea of faith without understanding, or what we called fideism, or understanding in order to believe, or rationalism. So, as right before we left off, we proposed a middle ground, faith-seeking understanding. This is where the two sides, the rationalists and the fideists, come together. And hopefully you watched the video of Anselm's ontological argument. I love the video. It's lighthearted, and I wanted it to kind of be a little bit lighthearted, although I would love to have a maximally great pizza. But here's what I really wanted to do, is still communicate the truth of the argument, which I think Dr. Craig does in that video. And so I think it's also a really good example for us of how we can change the context of the way that we're presenting a theological idea or a construct in order to be appropriate and contextual with our audience, right? So we enjoy watching little videos like that make things really clear and easy, and they use absurd examples, but the examples that help us to understand what is actually being said. So I want to kind of begin to make sense of this idea and unpack this middle ground here of faith-seeking understanding. So as we begin to synthesize things in our minds, put it all together, dive deep here into this faith-seeking understanding, I want to kind of look through these three different ideas, this progression from knowledge to faith to trust. Right, the idea of a reasonable confidence rather than absolute certainty. So think about this for a quick second, right? We reason about God in the presence of God and under His direction and special revelation. So we're praying things like, God, we know that you are faithful. God, you have proven yourself faithful in the past, and we trust in your faithfulness in the future. Right, so that's a really important idea, is that we can begin to approach with reasonable confidence. We can look at the past, see that God has been faithful. He's proven Himself faithful. That's part of His character. He always will be faithful. So God, please help us to be faithful, right, as we move forward, even in the things that we don't understand. The other thing that this does, faith-seeking understanding, it allows a place for doubt. And I want to really clarify this because a lot of people don't catch this point. But doubt and unbelief are not the same thing. Doubt is simply having trouble trusting God in a difficult situation. It's saying, God, I don't know how this is possible. I know that you're faithful and I trust you. I'm having some struggles here. But I would even say that our doubt potentially could lead us into a greater belief. Right? Whereas unbelief is different from doubt, because unbelief outright rejects God and the gospel and biblical truths. So biblical faith involves belief in the content of the gospel, trust in the person and work of Christ, and a reasonable response to the testimony of God in the Scripture. So how can we know anything at all? This is what we refer to as epistemology, and epistemology is the study of knowledge or truth. It's the doctrine of truth and knowledge. So I ask this question: what is our locus of truth? What is the center, the origin point, ground zero, if you will, of truth? And as a child, your locus of truth is your parents. So parents, as we have children, it's our responsibility to teach our children what's true. As children, we don't really look outside of our parents. If our parents say it's true, then we just believe it, right? But something happens in adolescence. In adolescence, depending on time and place and various other things, happens somewhere between the age of about 10 and about 13 is where this begins. And in adolescence, our locus of truth begins to widen. And and broaden. We begin to look outside of the boundaries of our parents, maybe to other trusted people in our lives. This is why it's so important, parents, as our children begin to grow and as they begin to age and they begin to seek truth, we don't try to just protect them. Rather, we allow them to explore those boundaries. We just help steer them towards healthy and trusted sources. Because listen, if we just give them the internet, they will be discipled by something and someone in some way that is beyond our control, right? And beyond our scope of what we would even consider healthy, right? So as our locus of truth begins to expand, and we begin to look at those who we think maybe are smarter than us or have know more than us, so-called experts in the particular subject, then our locus of truth begins to shift away from just mom and dad into those other people and other sources. So Christian epistemology, the doctrine of Christian truth or knowledge, Christian epistemology, our locus of truth is the Bible. It's really simple. We just hey, all of our knowledge has its origin from God. So our knowledge of the world, of natural sciences, of social sciences, philosophy, theology, they all have their origin in God because we have a biblical, healthy worldview, right? And the God who reveals himself to us in the world through creation, through Jesus the Son, and through the written word, what we would just simply call the Bible. That's a Christian epistemology. That's our locus of truth. So a thought life of devotion to Christ, man, there's this powerful statement here, and I just kind of ask this question, what are we going to do about it? Here, let me read this to you. The pursuit of intellectual virtues goes hand in hand with our call as Christian disciples to love God with our whole minds. As a student preparing for ministry, this means at some point we need to put down the smartphones, the Xbox controllers. We need to read widely and exchange laziness of thought for thought, a life of devotion to Christ. Man, what a powerful statement. Think about this, a thought life of devotion to Christ. How do we prepare our minds for theology? Man, we focus on and are devoted to the things of Christ. So here's the theme again. I hope that you're beginning to pick up balance. So when we begin to lean heavily into one direction, here's what happens. Eventually, we just fall over. And in theology, we jokingly call this kind of like a theological island where we're stranded all out by our own little selves, and there's nobody else around because we've gone so far in one direction that we no longer can reach back and hold the tension from the other side. That's a theological island. That's a dangerous place to be, especially when you begin to talk about faith and reason. The key is learning how to balance the tension, how to hold on to both sides so that we don't fall over. So next, as we kind of wrap up this whole section on preparation, here's what I want to do. I want to give you just a few practical things that I've put together over my years in ministry and education. Some practical things that we can do to ensure that our minds and our hearts are prepared to do theology well.